Okay, we're up to the Mishnah on Mem Gimel Amid Aleph, and it's a continuation of the Mishnah that was on Beis Amid Beis. Yes, I can't hear you.
Mem Gimel Amid Beis. You said Amid Aleph. We're up to the Mishnah Mem Gimel Amid Beis.
Anyway, the Mishnah on Beis Amid Beis.
What did I say wrong?
Mem Beis Amid Beis says
Gimel Amid Beis.
Kli with the tzura. You find a kli that has a tzura of a sun or a moon or some type of darken, a dragon. You go ahead and you put in the Yam HaMelech. That's the way to get rid of Avodah Zorah. You put in the Yam HaMelech. On that we have a Chalukei Deya, and that's what we begin on Mem Gimel Amid Beis. We're beginning the Mishnah. Rabbi Yossi Yomer Shoichek v'Zorah l'Ruach Oy Mata Layam. You know, you have a choice. You don't have to put in the Yam HaMelech. You can go ahead and grind it up and throw it to the wind. Right now, it says Rashi Shlo Yikash L'Bo Yisrael Lechanas. By throwing it to wind, what are you guaranteeing? That no Jew will have enough from it. Because you're not allowed enough. Because okay, so Amullah, they told Rabbi Yossi that's not a good way to get rid of it. Because Afu Nasa Zevel. It seems that when you go ahead and you grind it up, it becomes fertilizer. And by throwing it in the wind, it's going to land on the ground. It's going to end up on the ground. It's going to end up in a field, and it's going to end up fertilizing your crops. And you will have hana. And of course, it says, don't be garish shenemar, be garish v'nemar. It says la yidabek biyadcha meuma la yibak. There should not be what? It should not be la yidbak biyadcha meuma. There shouldn't be anything there. So in other words, they disagree with Rabbi Yossi's way of getting rid of the Avodah Zarah. We're going to have the rest of the blot is going to be questioning. This blot Gemara is going to be questioning. What are you talking about? Rabbi Yossi is going to have rayas l'chayra that it is a viable way of getting rid of the Avodah Zarah, and we're going to have the comeback of the Chachamim that it's not a viable way. That's mamish the blot, mamish not beautiful amid of Gemara. Okay, so Tanya, let's state in Gemara. Tanya, Amalem Rabbi Yossi. Now the pasuk says, it says, "Veschataschem asher sisem," and the chatas that you've made as a egel lakachti. Ve'esraf oisa be'esh. Moshe says, I took the egel, I burnt it in fire. Ve'ekos oisai tachan heitiv, and I went ahead and ground it up well. Adashedak la'afar. Ve'ashtechas afar el anachal yoyim minahar. And I threw it to the nachal that was yored minahar. That's what it says. So what do you see? Says the Gemara. Tanya Amar Lam Rabbi Yossi v'alokvanema v'schataschem asher asisem es egel lokachti ve'esroiv v'sebeish ve'ekos esay tochen heitiv al asher dok la'afa ve'ashlech esafori es hanachal hayored minahar. So l'chayra, he's saying that he did it. He threw it in the water. So Taisa says, so threw in the water. Where's the fertilizer? So it's going to end up on the water is going to take it to the shores. It's going to end up. Eventually, it's going to end up being used what? So therefore, what do you see? You see, l'chayra, it's a viable way of viable way of getting rid of it. Okay, so Amrulai, they told him. In other words, that's the kasha of Nachmo. The kasha is, you see, Moshe Rabbeinu was not concerned about. I jumped the gun. Moshe Rabbeinu was not concerned with the fertilizer. He went ahead, he ground it up, he put it in water and got rid of it. So you see, you could get rid of it that way. So why do you tell me, you Chachamim telling me you can't get rid of Avodah Zarah that way? Moshe got rid of the egel that way. So Amrullah, they told him, Misham Raya, there's no Raya from there. Hari Oimer, it says over there, Vayizer al Pnei Hamayim. It says he spritzed it, what? He burnt it. And he gave it to drink to Bnei Yisrael. We saw Gemara, well, actually, I saw it recently. There were three levels by the Egel. The ones that brought Karbonis and burned Ketairis to the Egel, they died al Yidei Cherev Sayef, like in Erni Dachas. If they hugged and kissed the Avodah Zarah, they got Askara. They got some type of diphtheria disease that began in the throat and goes down to the Bnei Ma'ayin. And the ones samech baliboy, those are the ones they gave to drink. Those are the ones they gave to drink. So we're giving a teretz that in fact we're giving a teretz in fact that it was not used for thrown to the wind. You thought it was thrown to the wind. It wasn't thrown to the wind like you assumed. It was given to Bnei Yisrael to drink, and therefore what? And therefore Vayisrael Bnei Amayim Yashkes Bnei Yisrael leiniskaven el leboitgam kisaitis. Right. So the kavanah was to be bited like saitis. Memela, you can't bring me a raya from there. Because again, it wasn't used to get rid of the Avodah Zorah. It was used as a bedika. It was used as a bedika to crush it up and get rid of it. Okay, we'll skip that places. Another, Riyosi wants to bring another raya that grinding it up is a viable way of getting rid of Avodah Zorah. So this is discussing the Melech Asa. Now the Malachei Yehuda, there were some really good guys, some really bad guys. Asa was from the good guys, right? He was the one who got rid of Avodah Zorah. And he had a grandmother, Ma'acha, who was a big Avodah Zorah. So here's what the pasuk says in the Daf Yomi. The Gamacha Aim Asa, literally the mother of Asa, but it was the grandmother, Hamelech, Hesira Migvira Asher Asa Sol Ashera, Miflotzes. And the Gemara is going to discuss what's Miflotzes. Vayichres Asa es Miflatzta, and Asa went ahead and cut down Ha Miflatzta, Vayodek, and he ground it up, by Yisrael, and he burnt it, Benachal Kidron. And he burnt it what? Benachal Kidron. And he burnt it Benachal Kidron. So what do you see? That there's no concern of getting rid of it by grinding it up and getting a Nachal Kidron. So Amruloi, they said to him, Mishon Raya, you don't have a Raya from there. Nachal Kidron ain't a Megadol Tzmachim. In other words, if it was the concern that it would be a fertilizer, that's a problem. The reason over there it's not a problem is because Nachal Kidron was a barren land that was incapable of giving forth produce. Okay, this is speaking about when they on Yom Kippur, let's say, you'd have the Paraman Israfim, that's the par in the Sar of Yom Kippur, and you'd have the regular kabbanis that are brought. They put the water, they put the blood on the mizbeach, and the mizbeach would go ahead and take the blood. Then they put it on the side of the mizbeach, and there was a stream, and the blood the stream would take the blood out to Nachal Kidron. It would take it out to Nachal Kidron, and what would happen over there? Right. And they would go ahead and sell it to the farmers. Lezavel, the blood was sent as zevel. And it's Mila Dirabanan before the sale. So Lechari, you have a kasha. You want a taina. That Nachal Kidron is a barren place that's incapable of fertilization. You see over here that the blood would go out. They'd sell it to the Gananim. They sell it to the farmers. And the Gemara's assumption is they're selling it to the farmers of Nachal Kidron. Taisus says, how do you know? Little Taisus, right? You could have given an answer. Maybe, how do you know they were from Malkum Kidron, Nachal Kidron? Maybe they're from a different place. Elamah, what do you see? That Nachal Kidron is capable of what? Of fertilization. So Haju Kashal Duchte, you see that what? You see that Rabbi Yossi, you see it, yeah. Haju Kashal Duchte, you see that what? It's a viable way of giving it out, and you're not worried about fertilization. Kasha and the Chachamim, who has no Rabbi Yossi. And for the Gemara, no, Mekamis Yesh, there's different places in Nachal Kidron. Yesh Machim Megadol Tzmachim, Yesh Machim Shem Megadol Tzmachim. There are places that grow and places that don't grow. So where Macha, where they went ahead and burnt that in Nachal Kidron, was incapable of growth, and therefore there's no problem going ahead and smashing it up. So you have no raya to Rabbi Yossi. Let's see the top twices for a second. Nachal Kidron Eina Megadol Tzmachim. Mashma. It's mashma. It's totally barren. In other words, you're taking metal, you're grinding up the metal, and you're saying the metal is incapable of fertilizing only because it's Nachal Kidron. Mashma, if it was another place, so this is a good fertilizer, right? Again, you tell me Nachal Kidron, it doesn't work. Mashma, other places, it would work. The kasha, the perakisi adam, kamar, with the halach of kisi adam, to cover the blood of a bird or a chaya that you shecht, Ein mechasim b'shchikas kli matchis. You can't go ahead and cover the blood with a ground up metal kli. Lefi she'ein megadol tzmachim, because it does not go ahead and megadol tzmachim. So you have a kasha, a kasha mitzias. You're telling me the whole reason why the metal doesn't work because it's an achal kidroin. You see from the Gemara in Kisi Adam, metal in this case, no, it doesn't work at all. It doesn't work at all. You're right. Alone it doesn't. Like in Kisi Adam. When you mix it with the ground, hamagadol tzmachin. In other words, zich alein to cover the Kisi Adam geschmack. It doesn't work. Put it in the ground, and with the combination of earth, it will work. Who goyrim misayil etzmicha, it helps. Inami kishenisraf k'moy egel megadol tzmachim. Fas ari b'leisreif. Another teretz. If it's natural, you just ground it up, then it doesn't work, and therefore by kisi adam you can't use it. Once you burn it, when you burn something, it gives. I guess it's easier to go back to earth, right? And therefore, why do we mitzameach? So two terutzim. Either when it's mixed with schmutz, it does grow, or when it's after it's burnt, it does grow, and that would be an explanation. Very gishmak. Okay, so we had that Asa ground up the flatsta of his grandmother. So the Gemara now, just for a second, wants to describe the word. My miflatsta. What do you mean? What's the word miflatsta mean? What miflatsta? Rav Yehuda davim mafli litzniusa. It was wondrous, and it's literally it's snus. They made a zachrus on this egel. She made a zachrus and she was mizana with it every day. So that's lashon miflatsta. Rabbi Yossi wants to bring another raya, fellas, to what? To you're able to go ahead as a means of getting a viable way of getting rid of that Zorah is to crush it up. For like Fanemar. Okay, here's the pasuk. We know that Moshe Rabbeinu, Bnei Yisrael had at one point in time they had a reptile problem, right? They sinned by complaining, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent against them Nechashim HaNisrafim, these venomous snakes, and they were getting bitten and people were dying, and they dived into Moshe, and Moshe made a banner. Moshe made a nace with a snake on it, and that snake, anyone who would look at the snake would be cured. Now that snake was around for a long time, and here's what happens to the snake. Listen to this. It's a pasuk in Malachim Beis. Who heisir es abamos v'shibes emetzevos v'koras es ha'asheira. This is Chizkiyahu. V'kitas nechash hanechoshes, and he crushed the copper snake. Asher asa Moshe that Moshe made. Ki ad hayomim mahema, until those days, Bnei Yisrael mekachim loy, they would bring ketayros to this right by yikra loy nechushton, and they even gave it a name nechushton. So what do you see? You see that Chizkiyahu went ahead, what, and he crushed it up. Good. Now azma. So what's the raya? So l'chayra, after he crushed it up, what did he do with it? The assumption is he threw it to the wind, and he wasn't concerned that it's going to be fertilizer. So l'chayra, you have a raya to what? L'chayra, you have a raya. Let's see Taisus for a second. Like Vanema v'kitach, when Mistama lo yeshlichu liyam hamelech. Mistama, after he ground it up, he didn't throw it into the Yam HaMelech. The kimin shebol is saper hamaisa, right? Since it's coming to tell us what he did, in yeshlichu liyam hoyila leimer k'moshe mefarish v'hoylech b'yer hanachal kidroin. Right? In other words, if he did throw it, if you're telling me the whole purpose of the pasuk is how he got rid of it, then you would have said, you know what he did with it? He threw it in the Yam HaMelech. Okay, now, so therefore, what are you going to tell me? You should say he ground it up. Why doesn't it say he threw it to the wind? In other words, we're assuming he ground it up and he threw it to the wind. You're assuming that he didn't throw it in the Yam HaMelech because it would have said that. So it's the same kasha. So why doesn't it say he ground it up and threw it to the wind? Again, the whole raya of Rabbi Yossi is predicated upon that after he ground it up, he threw it to the wind, and there wasn't a concern about fertilizing land, correct? It doesn't say he threw it to the wind. All it says he ground it up, right? And Taisus is asking a kasha, maybe he threw it to the Yam HaMelech. Taisus is saying the pasuk would have told me that. For Taisus, then why didn't the pasuk tell me he threw it to the Yam? It's not necessary. Ki achash hoya nischak memela hoya nizra. What happens, guys? What happens to fine dust? The wind comes and blows it along. So Mimela it happens. So therefore it's taka guraya. Therefore taka it's a good raya. In fact, anyway, Rabbi Yossi is commenting to the Chachamim. You Chachamim say the only way we get rid of Avodah Zorah of metals, throw in the Yam Melach. I tiny you can go ahead what and grind it up. Frag the Chachamim to Rabbi Yossi. How can you grind it up? It's going to fertilizer. It says Rabbi Yossi to the Chachamim. The Chizkiyahu went ahead and took the kapra of Moshe and went ahead and ground it up. Derech Agav, fellas, did you ever see Mount Sinai? Did you ever see the signs? You have a snake by the hospitals. They have a snake on a banner. Because why? It's because it makes you better. That's why. That's the simon. What Mount Sinai heard Geshmak. Mount Sinai by Har Sinai, everyone got better. Everyone got cured. So in Mela, they call the hospital Mount Sinai, right? Because everyone got cured by Sinai. It's Geshmak. And also you have the sign of on the ambulances. You have the sign. You have a stick and you have a snake around it because people got cured.
Caduceus.
Right? What's it called?
Caduceus.
Caduceus?
Medical symbol with a snake wrapped around the pole.
Caduceus. It's called Caduceus. So nice to have an educated person share, someone who graduated high school.
Mount Sinai founded by Jewish people, Grata.
Anyway, you got a Geshmak Kasha, right? And the Toisus is Geshmak, fellas, right? You didn't throw into the Yam. Says so Amrulai, Misham Raya, again, rhetorically, means there's no Raya from there. Misham Raya, Hari Yoimer, Vayom Hashem al Moshe, Asay Lecha Sraf. Lecha, Mishalcha, it's yours. In other words, they could have served this as an Avodah Zarah, but it wouldn't asa, because it belonged to Moshe. And a person can't go ahead and asa something that doesn't belong to him. So very geschmack, fellas. So you're right. They served it as an Avodah Zarah, but it didn't have a Shem Avodah Zarah. So Moshe could have ground it up, thrown it to the wind. It fertilizes Gans Geschmack, and there's no problem because there's no Isra Avodah Zarah. Now, so therefore, why did he grind it up if it's not an Avodah Zarah? For Hassan, but didn't who there what he didn't. You didn't have to go ahead and grind it up. Elakim the Chazi the Katoy Yisrael Basrei. Since he saw the Yidden were going after it, they were making a mistake by going after this. They were being makta to it. Amad, he stood up for Kitasai. Okay, so he went ahead and he ground it up. Good, he ground it up. So Geshmak. So we had two kashas, one from Moshe and one from Chizkiyahu. Kashas the Rabbi Yossi Lecher is being a raya. You could grind it up. In both cases, what we had a teretz. Once it didn't fertilize the two, what it was not. It wasn't asa because Moshe. It belonged to Moshe, and you can't asa that. Okay, this is a pasuk in Shmuel Beis, and it's describing the war of David against the Pelishtim. The Pelishtim of Gaza or Gaza fame. That war is ongoing. It doesn't end. That fashtunk in the place. Gaza, it's amazing that place has been throughout history, been an eyesore to Klal Yisrael. Gaza, it's the same place. Anyway, so it says Vayazvum Shom es atzbeihem. They left their getchkas there. The Yisoyim David va'anashav. Now, literally, you would think, and David and his men carried it off. You wouldn't need to tell me that. I mean, Mela, if it's left there, what are you telling me they carried it off? There must be something more significant than the act of carrying it away. Umay mashma, the Haiva Yisoyim, David Lishna Dizruyehu. You know what they did? They scattered it. Vayisoyim with touching, not that they carried it off, but they scattered it, meaning they crushed it up and scattered it, which is a raya to Rabbi Yossi and a kasha on the Chachamim. Now, how do you know it means scattered? Kidimitargim Rabbi Yosef, Tizreim v'ruach tesiyim. Tizreim, go ahead, crush it up, and the ruach will go ahead and carry it away. Umitagaminon, tazrinon v'ruach tetadlinon. Throw it to the wind, then it'll be carried away. So l'chayra, Rabbi Yossi has a raya that you're not a problem of Avodah Zarah of going ahead, crushing it, and throwing it away. So Amrulai Misham Raya, Hari Oimer, by Yisafu Ba'esh, it says in Divrei Hayomim, and they burnt it in fire. So now you got a problem. One place it says by Yisoyim, they scattered it. Another place they said that what? And they burnt it. Umidloi Kesiv v'Yisrafim v'Yisoyim. Now, if that's what they did, fellas, it should be in the same pasuk. Like, in other words, remember, they left. You're telling us what happened. So what happened? They left their atzabeyim. Vayisrafim, they burnt them. Vayisayim, and they scattered it. Right? It doesn't say that. It says two separate places. Vayisayim, vayisrafu. Good, two separate places. Shmamina, vayisayim mamish. Right? L'chayra, they carried it off themselves. In other words, it didn't taka like you think scattered. Really, what they did is they carried it off. Good. Again, if it meant that that like you said scattered, and you're telling me exactly what happened, you have a pasuk says they burnt it. So therefore, if you want to tell me the sequence of events what occurred, in order to scatter it, you have to make it into dust. What would the action of making it into dust be? Burning. So the pasuk should have said, if I saw means scattered. What should the pasuk say? They burnt it and they scattered it. It doesn't say that. It says vayisoim, and then another place says vayisrafu. Good. Now, if vayisrafu, right? So what happened over here? So it can't mean they scattered. It must be they carried it away. Now, if they carried it away, you, Rabbi Yossi, have no raya because it never was scattered, right? It never was scattered. So why does it say they carried it away? It's partial. What else are they going to do with it? So now there's a chiddush. Again, we began this raya by asking, why do you need to tell me they carried it away? Like, as us, what else? Of course they're going to do it. That's the that's the natural thing. So therefore, it must mean scattered. Says the Chacham to Rabbi Yossi, no, it doesn't mean scattered. Because why? Because if it did, it would have said in the same pasuk, they burnt it and they scattered it. Ella, when it says in two different pasukim, means there's a chiddush in each one. One chiddush, he burnt it, and the other chiddush is they carried it away. What's the chiddush to carry it away? Let's see the Gemara. But they didn't burn it, but they didn't scatter it. In other words, once they didn't scatter it, it has nothing to do with the price of tea in China. It has nothing to do with anything over here. So geschmack. So Mikol Mokayim Kashu Kroy Adadi. You have a problem from Shmuel Beis till Divrei Yomim. In Shmuel Beis it says Vayisoim, and Divrei Yomim says Vayisrafu. Kid the Rav Huna Rami. Ksiv Vayomer David Vayisrafu Beish. David went ahead, said burn the getchkas in fire. Uksiv, it says in Shmuel, Vayisoim, they carried it away. Like Kasha, Kan koidim sheba ita yagisi, Kan la'acha sheba ita yagisi. Right? What did I tell you? I said the other day, David had his guy, right? His guy was named Iti the Gathian from Gas. He went ahead. Makes sense to me. Anyway, so he went ahead and he what happened was he it's telling us too, before Istai came along and was Mavatal the Avodah Zorah, as we said, guys, a guy can be Mavatal the Avodah Zorah of somebody else, they burnt it. If the Gitai came along and was Mavatal it, they carried it away, it was worth a lot of money. So it's telling us 2 points and others. Now you have a Chiddush, guys. By Yisayim, the Chiddush by Yisayim is after Itai came, they were able to carry it away. Before that, they had to burn it. Now, they had carried it away. But what didn't they do? They didn't scatter it. They did not scatter it, right? They did not scatter it, and therefore it's no raya. Very geschmack. Okay, Tosfos points out something interesting. Kan koidnish by Itai Agisi. Tema. Lama leikach ovid kechavim levatel bal karchay kerebaloza kaper. Guys, why'd they have to wait for Itai to come along and mevatel? We said, you get a guy, smack him in the face, and say, go and mevatel it. That's what Rabbi Elazar Kappa did. He smacked the guy in the face. Void. Labai de mishani leel kishepachsa avu b'shvura afili yisrael mevatel avad kechavim shel avad kechavim lamalei shavruah. In other words, Abai said that pachsa, if they cut away a little bit, it's not a bittul. But if a Jew breaks the avodah zarah of a guy, then it's. In other words, you had other eitzes besides waiting for Itai to get rid of the shem avodah zarah, to mevatel it. There's a difference between wood and mateches. Wood you're able to go ahead and break. Mateches you can't. You have that you have to grind up. So you saw the difference in the two. Very nice. Okay, bottom line is Rabbi Yossi's challenged the Chachamim from Moshe, from Chizkiyahu, from David, and the Chachamim held serve each way, right? They held each way that by Moshe it can fertilize, by it can fertilize by Chizkiyahu, by that it wasn't Chizkiyahu. First we had a raya from Asa, right? That it didn't grow there. By Asa, it didn't grow there. I messed up, guys. Moshe was like a saita. They threw it in the water. Asa, they went ahead and it didn't grow there. And we have Chizkiyahu, it didn't belong to them, so they can't Asa. And now we have a fourth way. We have David, that they didn't scatter it at all. They went ahead and they carried it away. Now, how do you know Ita Gisei was the guy who would be Mavatal the Avodah Zorah? It says, Vayikach asateres malkam me al roishoi umishkala kika zahav. So what does the pasuk say? They were fighting against Ammon. They were fighting against Ammon, and the Avodah Zorah of Ammon was Milcom. And it was the shame of their malchus, they named it as Avodah Zorah. So it says in Shmuel Beis, Vayikach asateres malkam me al roishoi. They took the crown off the getchka, umishkala kika zahav, and it weighed a kikar zahav, which is a tremendous, very, very heavy piece. It weighed that much, and according to Art School, it weighed about 56 pounds. There's no way a person's wearing a crown that's 56 pounds, right? And it weighed a heavy weight. And what happened to this crown? What did they do with it? Vatihi al roish David. It's on the head of David. Ushlala ir haitzi har b'moed. Okay. It also says ve'evan yikara. There was a precious stone in this crown. Okay. So what happened? They fight against Bnei Ammon. They take this crown of the Getchka, and David wore the crown. Now, where does Itai come in? Hechi matzi, Fred the Gemara. Hechi matzi manach lu. How could David wear this crown? It was so heavy. Rav Yehuda, Rav. David. It means that it was royal to be David's head. Miraculously, it fit. It's not that he wore it, but it fit his head. Rabbi Yisrael Yuchinino Amar, Evan Shay'ava Haisaba, the Havidara law. There was a magnet that lifted it. Taisus points out there wasn't a magnet, guys, in the crown. The magnet was on the throne. So the magnet would go ahead and pull the crown, and the crown was kind of suspended over David's head. Fascinating. This crown kind of this magnet suspended the crown over David's head. It suspended the crown of David's head. Rabbi Lazo Amar, Evan Yikara Haisaba, Sheshava Kikazav. No, there was as the pasuk said, there was a precious gem. That precious gem, really the crown weighed normally, weighed much less. But this precious gem was worth the amount of Kikazav. So it wasn't that heavy. It wasn't that heavy. Okay, the bottom line is that Ita Agita, he went ahead and was Mavatal this. So Rav Nachman, I skipped that line. Guys, I skipped a line. Look at the first white line, the last words on the line. How is it mutter for David to take fellas the crown at Sasabana? This is the main point. I missed it. Rav Nachman, Ita Yakisi came along and was Mavatal it. Good. And then the Gemara goes ahead and describes how is it possible for David to wear it. After all, it was so heavy. It was so heavy. Now the Gemara is going to digress to discuss this crown. It says, Zois hoisali hi pikudecha natsarti. Zois, this was to me because because I watched your laws. My kamar, what's David saying to Hashem? Hachi kamar. V'schar she pikudecha natsarti. As a schar for watching your laws, Zois hoisali le'edis. This crown was to me an edis. My edus. So what was the edus of the crown? Amr Yeshua ben Levi, Shahaya Meinicha b'mkoim tefillin. David was able to put it on the place of the tefillin by lamta, and it fit him. It fit him. Fred more of a boy anuchi tefillin. How could it, if he puts it on the place of the tefillin? How do you have to put on tefillin? So Rav Shmuel by Yitzchak Makam Yesh Baroish Sheroy L'Niach B'Shtei Tefillin. In a person's head, there's a place for two tefillin. You know, fellas, if you ever saw, I've seen people wear Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam, two pieces of tefillin in that spot. Yeah, I've seen it. Weird, but I've seen it. Two little batim on the head and on the arm, two. And so there's a place for two. So you yaitz Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam at the same time. Not the Rabbeinu Tam's nasan that you were describing before. And he says that. So vayitziu es ben Amelech vayidnu olav es hanezer v'esa edis. And they brought out Yoash. Yoash was the only survivor of a purge where Talyahu killed that. She wanted to be the queen. She killed everybody, and that Yoash was hidden. And they brought him out. He was a kid, and the crown fit. And that's how he knew he was ready to be king. Vayitzu es ben Amelech vayidnu olav es hanezer v'esa edus. Nezer is Luklila. Nezer means a crown, and Edis means that this is a crown of Edus. Rav Yehuda Amarav, Edis hu lebeis David. It was an Edis to the Beis David. Shekola royal malchus lamtai. Anyone who was royal malchus, this crown would fit. V'chol she'ein royal malchus ein lamtai. And anyone who's was not royal malchus, it would not fit. So therefore, it fit Yoash as a raya that he was right to be the king. But it says now when David was holding by dying, Adoniah, his son, he wanted to be the king, and he brought Yoav to join him, and I forgot I forgot the Kohen Gadol, his name, that he got to join him, and he was causing a rebellion. And Bathsheba goes and says to David, and David says, "No, don't worry, I swear that Shlomo is going to be the king." So what does it say about Adoniyahu? Adoniyahu ben Chagis misnasei leimani amlach. He went ahead and he lifted himself up, saying, "I'm going to be the king." Amrav Yudam Arav shemisnasei lelamtoi velamtoi. How did he go ahead and raise himself up? He put the crown on. It didn't fit. Put the crown on. It didn't fit. And then it says, "Vayaslei rechav u'proshim chamishim mishras lefonav." He made chariots and horsemen, and 50 guys running in front of him. Ma'ariv Usai, what's significant about these 50 people? Hana kulam netulei tchol. They had taken some type of medicine that got rid of their spleen. V'chakuke kapas raglaim hayu, and their soles of their feet were carved out. It seems like they run barefoot, and the spleen slows you down. So these guys were 50 very fleet people. Now it says over here that the crown didn't fit. Now, Pasha, you think it didn't fit, right? Then this crown is an edus.
Was this the crown that had a rod going through it? And they had
very good, Rav Nassim. So why didn't it fit? State in Rashi, Sanhedrin Chaf Aleph Amid Beis, right? Says Rashi, Shepikis Lahoma V'Le'an Lamtoi, that Adoniah put it on, Sheteshev B'Roishai Kesem Malchus V'Le'an Lamtoi, it didn't fit. If you shahoyer sharvit shel zahav b'toich chalala midayfen l'dayfen, there was a bar of gold that went through this crown from one end to the other end. Ve'ena misyasheves b'roishai el shemish leichritz b'roishai. It only fits someone who had some type of chritz, like some type of groove in his head. Here edus lebeis David, and this was edus lebeis David. Shekol haroyal l'malchus hamlatai. Anyone who was royal malchus, it would fit. So Rashi doesn't say it here, but he says in Sanhedrin, very good Nassim. He says in Sanhedrin that
so the Chashmonaim didn't wear that crown, right? The Chashmonaim kings couldn't have worn that crown because they weren't legitimate, right?
Not only the Chashmonaim kings, even if he came from Yehuda.
Yeah, right.
Even if he came from Yehuda. I would think that crown might have been lost by then, by the time of the Chashmonaim. You're talking about the destruction of the bias and everything, they weren't real kings.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So it could fit.
They usurped the Malchus. They weren't from Yehuda. Like
right.
Famous Ramban, Yosef Shevet Yehuda,
right,
says that the Chashmonaim, even though the Hasidim Gemurim, they all got killed out because they usurped the Malchus. The Ramban in Vayechi, very famous. Right. Okay. Anyway, very very geschmack. Okay, very good. Another geschmack of Black Gemara coming up. Very. Oh, it's the kapara for Shavuos. I'm telling you this. I hold this. Here it is. Okay. Shoel Preiklois ben Plois ben Pil Loisweis. Try saying that fast. It's really nice. Preiklois ben Loisweis. This guy Rashi says Min Ovid Kechavmaya. He was from Talmidei Yeshua Noitri, and he asked the following question: asked Rabbi Gamliel, Ba'akon. Shahaya Roichetz b'Merchatz Shel Aphrodite. He was going ahead, and he was bathing. Rabbi Gamliel in Akka was bathing in this bathhouse, and it was known as the bathhouse of Aphrodite. We said that we saw that they used to have a place. Remember, they would have a keeper. They would go ahead and build a place where you'd be able to build a house of Avodah Zorah, but you couldn't complete it, right? You couldn't put the place where they're going to keep the getchka, right? The keeper, or the dome. They had a place to keep it. So it seems the Beis Merchatz was a common place, and they would go ahead and put a getchka in there. So Rashi says, Aphrodite, excuse me, Shema Baidas Kechavim, V'amerchatz oimid b'chatzeirah. So it wasn't in the getchka was not in the bathhouse per se. The bathhouse was what was in the chutzner of this getchka or Aphrodite. Nonetheless, we had Rebbe Gamliel taking a bath in there. So this fella, Proiklois, said to him, Amar Loi, said Proiklois to Rebbe Gamliel, Chasib Teiraschem, steht in dein Eier Teira, La Yidbak B'cho Be'uma Min Acherim, V'nei Ma'at HaRoichetz B'merachat Shel Aphrodite. So what are you doing here? You shouldn't be here. So Amar Loi, so Rebbe Gamliel replied, again, this is important. He replied to him, Mashmi replied to him in the Merchatz, Ein Meshivim B'merchatz. I can't answer you in the Merchatz. In other words, no, he's telling my halacha, guys. No, there's halacha, you can't tell in the Merchatz. The Gemara is going to question, how could you go ahead and tell halacha in the Merchatz? You're not able to talk and learning. So, Gufa, Ein Meshivim B'merchatz is a shtick halacha. So you should be able to say that either. In other words, you can't, Fashtetzach, you can't talk and learning, right? But even in other words, you wouldn't be able to tell him, I can't talk and learning. Because by telling him that, you're talking and learning. The Gemara is going to ask this akasha. So he told him, Ein Meshivim B'merchatz. Ukeshayatza, when they left the Merchatz, Amaloi, so he said to him, Ani loy basi bigvula, I didn't come to her gvul, he bal the bigvuli, she came to my gvul. Good, meaning I was here first. And then they went ahead and named the Merchatz after her. They brought her in afterwards. The Gemara is going to ask, Mashma, if they would have brought it down but first, it would be usher? We're going to see it's not. So that's one thing he said to him. A second thing he said to him, they're not going to say that what? That Merchatz was made as a Noil Aphrodite and it's Asa. They wouldn't say that. They'll say that what? That the Merchatz was made as a Noil Aphrodite. Okay. That the Aphrodite was made a Noil Merchatz. That's the second thing he told him. Davar Acher, a third thing he told him. Now, this Davar Acher, says the Ritva, is predicated upon even if the bathhouse had been there first. In other words, so you smash them up. The reason it didn't work is why? Because it was here before her. What about if she was there before him? Mash would be a problem. This Davar Acher is going to take care of that taina. Davar Acher, im noisen l'chon mom in harbe. I ata nichnas abayis kechavim shalcha orim ubalkeri umashim b'fanecha. If they give you a lot of money, would you go in front of your Avodah Zorah without clothing as a balkeri and urinate in front of it? Zuay medes al pi abiv, and over here everyone stands by the sewer. I guess the water rushing through. And everyone urinates in front of her. It only says so he gave him three reasons why there's no problem. One, we were there first. Two, that the Aphrodite is the noi for the bathhouse. And three, how would you treat your Avodah Zarah by going at one and going to the bathroom in front of it? Okay, the first point was they answered. He asked him Akasha, and Rabbi Gamliel said to him, "Ich ken nicht reden mit dir. I can't speak to you." Now, that statement that I can't speak to you is gufa. He's not able to speak. How could he answer him that? Every place is mutter to think and learning, with the exception of a beis hamerchatz or beis hakisei. So how could he answer him that? He said it in whatever the language they spoke at the time, and not lashon kodesh. Rabbi, devarim shel chol. Take guys, say hello to Yohanes and Avraham Stern.
Give me this share. Okay, fine. I'll call you back.
Dvarim shel chayil muta lo'imram b'lashon kodesh. So if it was dvarim shel chayil, you could speak the holy language. Dvarim shel kodesh asalayim b'lashon chayil. But if it's dvarim shel kodesh, like this is, like this halacha, you can't even say lashon chayil. So l'chari has got a valdiga kasha. How could Rabbi Gamliel open his mouth in the first place? Listen to how the Bryce, the guy's a little pitchika. Tana kishayatza, when he went out, Amaloi emeshiv memerchatz. He didn't. In other words, he did not say that in the merchatz. In other words, a little tweak in the merchatz when he asked it. Then on the way out, then he said to him, then he started talking. Okay, now, Amar Rav Chama bar Yosef, Amar Rav Oishia Baribi. Take the Baribi and put it after Rav Oishia. Okay, Baribi usually means the God Ladar. So Amar Rav Chama bar Yosef. So Amar Rabbi Oishia Baribi. Tshuva Genuva Heshivu Rebbe Gamliel Loisa Hegmain. Rashi learns he gave him the futch. He went ahead and he gave him like something you can doicha with cash. He gave him something very easy. In other words, Tosfos learns no. Mamish told him something along this over here. Rashi learns Tshuva Genuva he gave him. What did he say to him? Vani Omer, and I Rav Chama bar Yosef. I answered Rav Oishia Baribi. Ain't a Genuva. It's not a Genuva. It's not a Genuva dikateretz. My Genuva say, what was the teretz that, in other guys, whatever Rebbe Gamliel told him, there's a workaround, meaning it's not a good teretz. It's not a good reason. Because, in other words, and therefore, what's the real reason? So, in other words, he's tiny that what Rebbe Gamliel said is not a good reason, Rav Oishia Baribi, and Rav Cham says, no, Itaka is a good reason, okay? And that's going to be, I'm going to have the whole three cases of the Gemara, the three things he told him, right? We're going to address each one. So watch.
Genuva means it's not a good reason. That's what Genuva means?
Genuva means he told him. It's Rashi and Tais. According to Rashi, he gave him a doichet teretz. According to Tais, he gave him a concealed teretz, like Genevas das. Lashon Genevas das. So now, my Genuva say, the Kamaloi. Zu made this al pi abiv. Okay, this is number 3, right, guys? This was the third thing. You're standing by the sewer. V'chalodna mashlim b'fanecha. Now, right. So it's mashma that urinating in front is a raya that it's not an avodah zarah. But 1 second, we all familiar with avodah zarah that something worse than urinating, right? We don't know where Rava says this. Pa'or yochiach. Pa'or will disprove you. Shemefarin lefanav b'chol yoyim ve'ena batal. Good. So in other words, it's a doichik teretz he gave him. He's saying that you're mashtin, if you go ahead and urinate, you sign that it's this kind of avodah zarah. Bal par, you're defecating in front of it, and it is an avodah zarah. So the teretz he gave is doichik teretz. Va'ani oimer, says Rav Chama, no. Anigen ain't a genuva. It's not a doichik teretz. It's a ganz fein teretz. Zu avidasa bekach. Par, that's the way you serve it. You know, each avodah zarah had a unique way of service. This is the avodah zarah of par. Vizu, but Aphrodite ain't avodah bekach. Good. So therefore, Taka gave him a good teretz. It wasn't genuva. It wasn't a genevas tastika teretz, right? Taka was a good teretz. Of course, there's a chilik between Baal Par and Aphrodite. Guys, good. Okay. What was the first thing he told him? That did I come into her gavul? She came into my gavul. Amar Abaya genuvasa mechacha. Okay, here was Rav Oishia Baribi's problem. The Kamalei, Anile Basi Big Vula, Vihi Ba Big Vuli. I didn't come to her gavul, she came to mine. I was there first. Vihi Ba Big Vulasa my have, Rashi, Klaimar. Vafilu Kadma by this Kechavim Lemerchatz, Mayech Baslan. And even if the avodah zarah came first, it's not a problem. In other words, the teretz he gave him one time is this kind of teretz, right? Because it's mashma that what if the avodah zarah came first, there'd be a problem. No, even if avodah zarah came first is not a problem. But Tanan, avodas kechavim sheyesh lemerchatz oigina nenen mehem shalei b'toiva. You could have enough from them shalei b'toiva. Shalei b'toiva means that the priests, without giving hana to the priests, right? That's Rashi says. Look at Rashi. Shalei b'toiva shalei yachzik toiva l'kaimim. By going ahead and using it, the priests say, look, the Jews are here. Come on, it's not aser. In other words, there's no hegdish there that, so you can go ahead and use the merchatz of an avodah zarah, even shalei b'toiva, even without giving cover to the priests. Veinene mehem b'toiva. V'ani oimer eina genuva shaloi b'toiva. It's not a case of shaloi b'toiva. So Gamliel ki b'toivasa acherim dami. Okay, Pirish. If you a regular Joe would use this bathhouse, you're not giving hanot to the koimrim. If Rabbi Gamliel, the Gadol Ador, goes into this bathhouse, he's going to be machzit toiva. So he's giving him, right, Rashi, kitoivas acherim shahoya choshev v'toiva hi lahem kishunene mahach hilkachi lav merchatz koidim havi asa kolhani. If not for that right, if not that the merchatz came before the avodah zarah, taka would be asa. In other words, if choshev a person would use it, it would be asa. So therefore, what was this saying? What did he say? Did she come first? He came. The merchatz came first. For the Gemara, even if she came first, is not a problem. And for the Gemara, if she came first, it would be a problem because the great Rabbi Gamliel using it would be giving a tava. Okay, now the middle shot was who's giving noy to who? Is Aphrodite giving noy to the merchatz, or merchatz giving noy to Aphrodite? So each one of these genuvas is addressing the three issues of the Mishnah. We did the first one, we did the third one. Now we're getting to the second one. Rav Simi Bar Chia Amar Genuvas Mehacha. Tekama lo yizu amedes ala biv. Okay, I'm sorry, I went too early. Okay, so Le'inyan Bittel, fellas. So it's mashma by we had one kasha. One kasha was what? You're serving the avodah zarah that by par, and we said that that's avodah, not avodah. And here we're speaking about you're being mavasa the avodah zarah, and we want to show that you know what? Sometimes you're doing this in avodah zarah is not a bizli. Now, this is speaking in bittul. But Tanan, roik b'faneha, if you spit in front of the avodah zarah, you would think you're mavatal it. Hishtim b'faneha, you urinate in front of it, you think you're being mavatal it. Girira, you schlepp the avodah zarah, you think you're being mavatal it. V'zorik boyas at soya, you throw soya in front of it, you think you're being mavatal it. Harizu ain't a b'teila. It's not batal, right? It's not batal. So memela, if you go ahead and urinate in front of it, so therefore, it's still an avodah zarah, and your urination is nishkan raya. So memela, that was the genuva of Rabbi Gamliel by telling him, look, you're urinating in front of it as a raya is nishkan avodah zarah. No, you see, it's not true. Vani Yomer says Rav Simi ain't a genuva. It's taka good teretz. Hasam by the bittul the fisha atahu rasach Allah v'hadam afayasla. Listen, you were having a bad day. You had a fight with your avodah zarah. You had an argument, so you spit at him. You urinate in front of him. It's not nishkan bittul. You had a tough day. But hacha over here by the sewer in front of Aphrodite, the latrine called shaita v'shaita b'zilzul kaime mamish. Every single moment is zilzul. Therefore, what is a raya? There's this kind of avodah zarah. Therefore, I'm able to be here. Okay. Rambar Ula Amar Nuvasame hacha the kamalei. Ein oimrim. This is the number 2. Ein oimrim nase merchatz noil Aphrodite. Right? They're not going to say that what that. They're not going to say that. Ein oimrim nase merchatz noil Aphrodite. We don't say that the merchatz became noil for Aphrodite. El nase Aphrodite noil merchatz. That what? It's mashma that what had the merchatz been a noil for Aphrodite, it would be asa. Right? Someone says this house should be for an avodah zarah. This cup should be about avodah zarah. We say, I mean, Russell Goy can see Russell Hegdish. Hegdish. Just the act of saying it is magdashit. But we don't say it by avodah zarah. So even if you would have said, guys, you would have said the bathhouse is noy for Aphrodite, it wouldn't. In other words, that's the genuva. It's not a good teretz. Right? Every one of these teruts in the genuva is nishkain teretz, and every retort is no, it is a good teretz, right? So over here, what were you going to tiny? You're going to tiny that what? That this bathhouse was noif Aphrodite to be a problem? It's not a problem because it can be magdashit. Shein hegdash abayis kachavim. Bani oimer, but Rabbi Yosef said, now here's pshat. Nehi de itzurei le mistera. Now the merchatz itself is not asa, but noi mia ikka. The fact that what? That chashuv of people who go in there, that's a problem. Okay? No, it's not kodesh. But we don't want noi that people go ahead and use it. Memela, it's nishkain genivus. It's not a genivus. Okay.